This is Surviving as a Civilian. I am your host, Scott. With the help of my friend Andrew, we created this podcast to share success stories of combat veterans and how they overcame the challenges of returning back to civilian life. These are actual stories told by actual veterans. Content warning, this podcast talks about war, and some of the stories in this podcast contain graphic events of violence and may contain explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Additionally, these veterans are telling their story of how they recall the events. Some of the details may have changed over time. Welcome to Surviving as a Civilian. I'm here with our guest, Stephan Franklyn. How you doing, Stephan?
Doing pretty good, Scott. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy week to do this. I know you're getting ready to go somewhere far away from where you're at right now.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'm glad to help.
All right, so let's just get into it. What branch of the military did you serve in?
I was in the Army.
Okay. Why'd you pick the Army?
I grew up, and my dad was in the Army for a little while, and then he was in the National Guard for a little while, so I just kind of saw him in uniform a lot, and I wanted to be a soldier since I was a kid, really.
Okay, so you said your dad was in?
Yeah.
What was his MOS?
He was a combat medic.
Okay.
For most of his career.
Okay. What, about what timeline he was a medic? I mean, was it like during the Vietnam War or the Desert Storm?
Nah, it was more in the 80s. I think he was in Desert Storm, and then he had switched, I think he switched to Air Guard when he went to Iraq and did some stuff, but I don't really know what his job was at that point.
That's cool. So your dad deployed, huh?
Yeah, he was in Iraq for, I believe, 6 months.
Okay.
When I was a kid.
You said you saw your father in the uniform. That's kind of one of the things that helped you decide to join the military. Was there any other kind of circumstances?
Kind of actually. I actually was already in the National Guard, and then what made me go active duty was I got jail or Army.
Do you have the ability to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. Well, long story, kind of short. Basically, there was this kid who was a volunteer firefighter, and I knew him through some of my friends, and my girlfriend thought he was cool, and he started snooping around, even though we lived together, so he tried to sleep with her, and then she didn't sleep with him. And basically, I saw him in a McDonald's parking lot later on, and I beat the shit out of him. So he, ran off, drove off or whatever, and I went home not thinking anything of it. And then I get a call from the cops, and it turned out that his mom was a police officer. And I was 19 at the time, I believe. So I was 19. I thought he was 18, but he was 17. So the way it worked out was basically he could decide to try me as an adult or try me as a minor. And the cop convinced him that since he was the one snooping around and doing all that shit, that he should try me as a minor. So he did. And then my prosecutor basically said that he could either send me on probation and start kind of that cycle of that life, or he said since I was in the Guard, I could go active duty, and that would basically count as my probation period and all that.
What state were you Guard out of?
What's in Missouri, actually,
okay.
At Farmington.
Okay. And you said, so you must have been probably 17 or 18 when you initially joined?
I was 17 when I joined the Guard. I was a junior in high school. I did the split-op program, actually. Are you familiar with that?
Yep, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did. So you ruined a whole summer between your junior and senior year and then came back and finished it up, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it felt really cool.
What MOS did you end up picking?
Common Engineer, 12 Bravo.
And that was what you were in the Guard?
Yes.
Okay. So explain to people, what does a combat engineer do?
So the main idea of a common engineer is we specialize in mobility, counter mobility, and survivability. And that's just kind of a military way of saying that we can build expedient expedient posts, things like that, so that we can pull guard, build cops, fobs, whatnot. And then, big thing is clearing the way for any other units. So both my tours were mostly some form of route clearance. First one obviously was mechanized. Well, the second one was, actually clearing for the landmines and being able to destroy anything in the path that needs to be destroyed, like compounds, giant walls, or if we find explosives from the enemy, we can dispose of them and things of that nature. So, in a nutshell, a lot of demolitions and construction is kind of where it comes to.
So you did two deployments?
Yes.
And who was the first one with?
10th Mountain.
Okay. And the second one with 10th Mountain also?
Yes.
Okay. So what was your total time that you were deployed?
So the total time I was deployed was around a year and 9 months. The second tour being just right at about a year. And then my first tour was at the 9 months because I was catching up to the unit from the jail or army standpoint.
Gotcha. So were you a specialist when you came active duty?
Yes,
okay.
I was.
All right, so explain to me what you did while you were deployed.
So on my first deployment, that was route clearance. So searching for the IEDs in the road was mainly what that one was. I was a saw gunner, so I dismounted quite a bit with Sergeant Merlin Quiles was our squad leader.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I wasn't dismounted, he would switch us off between being the driver, gunner, and TC. But actually, me and Collis kind of had a good deal where he drove a lot after he got hurt, and I would gun whenever I wasn't dismounting. So my two main things were either dismount with a saw gun, or being a gunner. And then,
Steph, we might have a bunch of people that aren't really military. Explain people what the saw gun is. I think people might be thinking you have a gun either that with a saw on it or
a circular saw.
Right.
Yeah, the Gears of War thing.
Right, exactly. Okay. Right.
So a saw machine gun. It basically fires the same round as an M4 AR-15, but it's open bolt. It's fully auto. So usually that's where we're carrying at least 800 rounds. I believe, if I can remember right, I think 1,200 rounds is a full combat load. And Merlin would always put us, if we were saw gunners, always out as farthest as we could when we dismounted. So if anything shot off from a distance, we could immediately lay down suppressive fire while everyone else gets into the position.
Okay. So your first deployment, what was the overall mission for that deployment?
That one was route clearance.
Okay.
Clearing the route, getting rid of the IEDs in the road for the infantry units, I think then we were mostly working with the Cab Scouts a lot with 287 in 10th Mountain Division.
And your second deployment, what was your overall mission for that?
The second deployment, we did a lot of mine clearing. With that one, our squad was, we kind of did a lot of the big name operations. We started off by being attached to an infantry unit. They were kind of in the furthest part away from the firefights and all that, so they weren't getting into much. So we got passed over to Bob Wilson, which I believe became Bob Passab. And at that point, it seemed like we were utilized mostly with demolitions, really, destroying the compounds that the enemy were using to shoot at us, and doing the weapon caches. Anytime we found any sort of mine or what could possibly be a mine or UXO, we were destroying that. So the second tour was mostly destroying things, mostly blowing stuff up and then clearing for landmines for a little part of it. And really just trying to support the infantry guys wherever we could, or help them with anything really.
What was the funniest thing you saw over there, that second deployment?
The funniest thing?
Yeah.
Oh man, I think Andrew Wynn takes the cake on that, man. He was true entertainment through and through. Some of the shit. That's a good question because it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly some of the things that just made you belly laugh. Man, a lot of politically incorrect stuff too. I mean,
right.
It's like, I don't know, guys like beating the shit out of each other or something in the middle of a compound, or fucking trying to play with the goats and pissing people off or something dumb. It's, I can't think of anything specific that comes to mind. It's more of the people is what it seemed like for me rather than events. I just remember being around, Will McKinney was hilarious. Brian Shapiro was hilarious. Our whole squad and Nate Ontia, everyone really. So yeah, that's probably the best I can make of it, to be honest. Actually, you know what? I thought it was pretty cool when First Sergeant Gaw, the first time we came back to Fob Basab after being out on the tops, the first thing he did was he asked me what I needed, and I'm thinking duct tape and batteries and things of that nature. And he asked me, he's like, no, what do you guys need out there? And I'm like, I can't think of anything else. And then he runs into the talk and starts pulling out the Keurig and the mini fridge and all those other little things that they had in the office, basically. And one of the officers was screaming at him like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? And he started screaming back that we're out at the cops and all this other shit. And he loaded up the gator full of a bunch of stuff that we really didn't need to use. And that made me laugh quite a bit.
That's him, though. I mean, he really cared about the unit.
Yeah. I felt the same way when we were in country.
So we didn't talk about what country were you in. I guess we should have brought that out earlier.
Oh, yeah. Afghanistan for both tours.
Right. So the second tour, the one we're going to get in a little bit more detail, what area of Afghanistan?
That was in Kandahar, specifically the Zari district along the Arghandab River.
Okay. So what was you guys' mission when you got hurt?
So for that one, it was a 72-hour mission, where that's not a 3-day, 8-hour shift. It's literally 72 hours. And that one we were clearing for landmines.
Okay. Were you doing it in support of a bigger operation, or was it just a kind of day-to-day patrol?
That one was a bigger operation. I think usually the ones that are 72 hours, and because we did an air insertion, actually, I left that out. So yeah. That one was a pretty large mission. I know there was Charlie Company with 287. I think it was both of their platoons at least out there, and I don't know who else was out there, but I do remember there were 2 platoons out there.
So what happened?
So it was the second day. So the first day is kind of when you get to a location that you can set up in, and obviously we're being watched almost that whole time. We couldn't really see anything going on at night, other than what's in the NVGs, which can only get so far. And I think at some point in that night, they put a landmine in one of the fields. So the next day, we stepped off, started going to the location. I think we had to secure an area is what the idea was, or maybe clear or secure a couple different areas. But point is, we got out there. Someone was clearing with the mine hound, which is a mine detector, and we had those APOPs, which are like these backpack line charges, and we were using that to clear out a lot of the areas. So we actually found an area where we needed to set up for that, and the lieutenant and I were walking back to go get the APOPs backpacks because there's 2 backpacks and another piece for the rocket. And when we were going back, that lieutenant stepped maybe 2 to 3 steps outside of the lane. I think he just got a little complacent, like everyone does after, being on mission for 24, 48 hours. And then he stepped on a landmine. So I was pretty close to him. I'd say no more than 10 feet. So I got a lot of the debris on the right side of my body. That was mainly what got me, was the debris. He ended up losing his foot, and then the medevac choppers came and picked us up. That's a mission that after I got hit, my initial reaction was to scream for a medic. And I remember when I tried to scream for the medic, nothing could come out of my lungs because of all the dust, and my eyes hurt real bad from the dust. Even though I had my eye pro, it all came up under there. So I'm glad I had that, or else I don't, who knows what would have happened without it. And it took a solid second or so to actually spit out and call for the medic. And I just remember when it hit, I immediately heard nothing but ringing, and I was blinded by all the dirt that was kicked up and dust. And it felt like that moment there was no time passing. It just the first thing I thought was, what the fuck? That was like, it wasn't even the words. It was just like that confused emotion of like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. And then they called the medevac helicopters. I actually cleared the lane. I took hold of the minehound after that because the infantry guys that were on it, I didn't know how much training they had on that. So I cleared for the medevac chopper, the path that we would take with the lieutenant and for the medevac chopper. And then they took the minehound from me, and I went and checked on my guys Wright and Ansia and put them in position and told them that I was probably going to have to leave. The medic told me that he wanted me to go to Kandahar Airfield to get checked out to see if I had any shrapnel in like my neck or anything like that could cause big problems later on. So I let them know what was going on. I told Nate Ansia that he was going to be in charge of him and Wright since he had more experience, even though Wright outranked him. And then they medevaced me and took me to Kandahar Airfield. So no, there wasn't anything in my neck or anything. It was just mostly surface wounds for the most part. And yeah.
So you gotten peppered with parts of an IED, and you still grabbed the mine detector and cleared up to the medevac bird.
Yeah.
That's pretty ballsy. So what was your injuries then?
Basically, I don't say shrapnel because I couldn't find any metal parts. It was just a lot of the dust and everything, but it was pretty much surface level. My whole right arm and my right side of my face and some parts of my wrist. Actually, a little bit maybe of my side somewhere was basically all looked like it'd been peppered. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of scabs, but it wasn't anything, nothing deep that required like any kind of surgery or anything like that.
So where did you end up doing your recovery at? Just
what? Say that again.
Where did you end up doing your recovery at? Back at the Big Fob?
I was at Kandahar Airfield for a week, and yeah, it was kind of cool the way they did that. It was basically you check in at a morning time and check in at an evening time, and that's all they really cared about, so long as you had someone with you while you were out and about.
So was this this incident or injury, was this the cause of you getting out from military?
No, that wasn't why I left the military.
But what I'm saying is you ended up ETSing, right?
Yes.
Okay, right, okay. But this didn't have any decision with you leaving the military?
No, not really. I was still debating on if I wanted to stay in or not for a little while after that, actually.
So we got back from that one, and what was your plan?
So when we got back from Afghanistan or the mission, or
Afghanistan.
Okay. So I knew, I figured, I determined in Afghanistan that I wasn't going to stay in. And actually, I had extended my contract to deploy. So I think I was the second person to come back right after Mooshack. So I got back, and it wasn't long after that I already started out processing. I had saved up a little over 60 days of leave, so I planned on taking terminal leave, all that time. And basically my plan whenever I got back and knowing that I was going to get out, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to start some kind of business. That was my main goal.
So do you think you feel like the Army, the transition program, you think that helped you out in getting out?
It was all right. We had ACAP then. I think I've heard they might do something different now, but yeah, it was all right. It wasn't anything extensive, but they did kind of teach you how to get together like a resume and do some practice interviews and stuff like that. But I think it could probably be improved upon if someone really analyzed it and thought about what they could do with it. I think it was only like a month or something like that, and it was really only, or maybe 2 weeks or something. I can't remember how long it was, but it was all right. It was better than nothing.
That's not saying much though.
Yeah.
So immediately out of the Army, what did you do?
So immediately after the Army, the first thing I did was I went back home to my parents' house, and I just stayed with them I went back into the Guard. As I was out processing, the National Guard guy that tries to get you signed up got me. Told me that basically he told me that I could finish out my 8-year contract if I went to Guard. I only had a year and a half left on it. And he said, he guaranteed that I wouldn't deploy for 2 years and whatnot. So I did that, and I chose the Guard in California and came out here. So I just stayed at my parents for a couple months to kind of de-escalate and unwind for a little bit, kind of gather myself again, and then I moved out here to California.
How did you deal with getting out and just kind of decompressing though? What was some of the things that you kind of mentally went through as you're now went from probably 7 months earlier to now you're sitting in California?
It was kind of wild because being young, I don't know how soldiers view it now, but I remember on my first deployment I turned 21 on my first deployment, and I remember thinking that PTSD wasn't really a thing. I thought it was one of those things that if you're just mentally tough enough that you won't have to really deal with it. And then I came back from the first tour, had some dreams here and there, but I figured that was normal. But it was when I really left the military that I started taking more notice of things. Dreams that seemed very real. I remember actually when I came back from Afghanistan the second time, I was at the USO in Syracuse, and I was waiting for a plane, and I remember sleeping in the recliner. And in my dream, I saw a friend of mine, RE Colors, who, I remember watching a rocket come in and explode, and ended up being him that was hit. And I was in the USO, and my dream was like nothing had changed, but everything was the same. And he was sitting on a couch near the door of the USO, and I was like, oh my God. And he was all pieced up and scarred, but it looked like he was sewn back together basically. And I remember, and I was like, oh my God, man, I thought they got you. I thought you were killed. And he's like, nah, man, they were able to get me, and they got me the surgery. They put me back together, man. I'm all right. And I'm like, oh man, like, please, like this. Please don't be a dream, man. I remember saying that in my dream. I remember saying, please do not be a dream. Like, please tell me this is real. He's like, yeah, man, it's all good. And then I woke up and I looked and I was just like, holy fucking shit. And then, you throw your bag on and you go through security fucking checkpoint, and they fucking tell you, unwind your shoes because you might be carrying something down or whatever. So yeah, for a little while, I struggled, especially with big crowds. Being a dumb young kid, I used to love going to the club, and then the first time I went to a club after I got back from Afghanistan, I had to leave. My stomach was turning. I was super nervous. I felt like I was just like immediately. I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here. I can't stay in here. That stuck with me for a little while.
They
And I hated people. I didn't want to be around any people, pretty much.
Do you still have those issues?
No, not really. I think I've definitely come a long way from, the first day back. I'm really receptive to the right people, but I can, it's pretty much it's there or it's not, with people. That's about it. But I think a lot of people kind of go through that. I don't know. I think a lot of it comes just from maturity, for myself, as far as how I handle myself in certain situations. I still get dreams every now and again, although not as vibrant and detailed as when I first got back. But other than that, I'm pretty solid for the most part.
Any other kind of thoughts you had? Any kind of, extremely negative thoughts you had since you've been back?
Yeah, I had a bad anger problem when I first got back. Specifically, little things like, my GPS going out or something like that, or just rerouting or something. And it wasn't like, I've had anger where I'm like, oh, fuck. But I remember, man, one time my GPS took me on a wrong turn because it registered a wrong road or something. I got so pissed off, I punched my fucking windshield, and then I actually cracked my windshield, which is stupid. Like, the phone or windshield didn't feel it at all. And I had some things like that. It wasn't so much that I stewed in negative thoughts. It was like something small like that could trigger it off, and then it was just like pure rage. That's kind of what I struggled with for a while.
So how long have you been out now?
So now I've been out since from active duty. I got out in 2012, and then 2013 for the National Guard, I believe. So yeah, about 6 years, almost 7 years now, 6.5.
So what are you doing now?
So, well, right now I'm kind of in transition. I just work with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It's just kind of a career break from when I first got out here. I started, my own business, and then I took started a couple of them, and then started a sales job, all that. But now it's just a chill office job. But now I'm moving out to the DC metro area, and I'm looking for a job as a business analyst.
Wait, slow down. So you started a couple businesses?
Yeah, actually. You might like this one. So I moved out to California to open up a gun store.
Okay.
So that's I did that for I did flea markets for a little while to kind of learn the market, and then I opened up the actual storefront and did that for about 3.5 years. That was actually really helpful in my recovery because I set up my shop right in front of the VA hospital. And so I got a lot of vets coming in. It kept me kind of focused on what I was doing. I was able to talk and meet other people that had gone through similar situations or worse situations and whatnot.
And you went to you did college right after you got out too, didn't you?
Yeah. So that's true. I started the business, and right before I started the storefront, I was in college. I started looking for my bachelor's in business administration.
Nice. Where are you at now? Master's degree?
I finished with my master's about a year ago.
Nice.
October
Congratulations.
2018. Thank you.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
So you're headed out to DC?
Yeah. Virginia specifically, that area.
Do you think that the time you spent, the deployments you did, and the experience that you got in Afghanistan, more so Afghanistan, I think it kind of helped you out with, life decisions and things like that.
Definitely, in every way.
But like what part though? What part specifically?
So really, it really developed a sense of grit. It gave me this feeling that I can do and conquer anything. I mean, it's more of all the ways that it feels, and anything I could specifically say. This helped me with this. I kind of, you kind of learn how to connect with other people, which is actually really helpful. Being stuck in a tent or whatever for however long, you start to learn the more important questions, I guess. So that's helped, but I would say more than anything, I guess practicing the determination and the grit, and always exercising that will. I'm not afraid of working long hours, working strenuous hours. I think that's really done it more than anything. And in the business and professional business community, people do tend to appreciate that when I talk to them and I tell them a little bit of my story. It seems like we always feel like our own story isn't that significant until we're telling it to someone else, and then it's a huge deal to them. So it's definitely helped me in a lot of ways.
So if you were to give some advice to someone getting out of the Army now, something that you wish you could have done differently, what would it be?
Man, I think that if I could do anything differently to someone getting out of the Army, I would say to start trying to build relationships with people again. One of my final papers in my MBA was about venture capitalists, and venture capitalists, through a big study, the number one asset between all venture capitalists, that they said, was your network. And I've seen, Will McKinney has totally done well with that, and Justin Griffin is a big example of someone who's made a high position just through networking. And you learn to find the right people that you want to be around, that are more like you. And I think that was more helpful than anything else I've done, was learning how to connect with people and build relationships.
So just let somebody know just to start building relationships.
Yeah.
No, it's
in
good.
detail.
I honestly too, I think that it's not even just building relationships, it's having to get people and deal with people to help them get to what you want done.
Yeah.
It's I think that's one of the biggest things the military does, because quite honestly, if you're not in their chain of command or you don't supervise them, they don't have to do shit for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot of it too, trying to get some of those mechanics to fix your truck ahead of other people and that kind of crap.
Right. Yeah, that's a big thing. That's the world operates on favors, so even government contracting, when I've learned a little bit about that, a lot of it had to do with the people you built relationships with that might see your name in your bid, and that bid ends up getting a little bit more attention than the others. And, I know there's supposed to be a process for it, but yeah, and anyone can, there's apps out there like meetup.com, and they can just type in like business professionals or happy hour or social networking and start to meet people. And you'd be surprised how many times you can go into one of those things and find somebody else who is also in the military. I met a guy that was he was the parajumper in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
He was a real cool guy. And you just meeting anyone like that, like you said, that can help you with whatever you're trying to get accomplished.
So is any of the people, you still keep in contact with some of the people you deploy with? I know you keep McKinney and Griff.
Yeah, I'm still in contact with quite a few people. I talk to Will McKinney and Justin Griffin probably at least weekly. Brian Shapiro, he was my roommate for a long time. He lives about 45 minutes from me. He's moving to Denver, but so I stayed in contact with him. Nate Onsi, I stayed in good contact with. Me and Andrew Paulus still talk every now and again. Yeah, I've tried to stay in contact with quite a bit of people. I'm still in Johnson, Sapper J.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still, I still talk. I just saw him in August, and I haven't seen him since. Well, I knew him on my first deployment before he got injured. So yeah, I try to stay in touch with a lot of people.
Lifelong brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is for sure. It's one of the things that I really like the best about the military. I haven't talked to you for how long, and I can call you up. You do this podcast for me, and it's like we didn't stop talking.
Yeah, you just kind of pick up where you left off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, not a problem.
I know you're super busy, and I don't want to keep you too long, but thank you so much for supporting this, and I will get a hold of you when this comes out and let you get first listen to it.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate that.
Before I go, on behalf of Andrew and I, we would like to thank all the veterans we talked to for taking the time to share their stories with us. We created this podcast to show not just the military, but everyone that you can make it through some of the toughest times in your life and come out on the other side on top. Here at Surviving as a Civilian, we cannot stress enough the importance of getting help if you need it or giving help if you can. Sometimes it could be as simple as making a phone call or answering that phone in the middle of the night from someone you haven't heard from in a while. If you or someone you know is struggling, help is available at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or text the word HOME to 741-741. If you think your story can help someone out and you want to share it with us, please email us at survivingasacivilian.casting@gmail.com. Subscribe and rate this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcast. Like and follow Surviving as a Civilian on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Until next time, get help if you need it, or give help if you can.